I do see Omichi's question here regarding how much the course will cost. Honestly, I have no idea. So this is something that is interesting from like I guess a content creation perspective. I think for me, content creation has always been about sharing knowledge and resources with the community so that people can benefit and elevate their lives with that information. All that said, some content creators, which understandably, especially if it's your full-time job, there's a question of monetary value. But for me personally, so again, I can't stress this enough. This is just my personal take. I like to create content that comes from a place of authenticity and one that's not financially motivated. So to say that like this entire course would be completely free, probably not, because I also have bills to pay too, and this will probably take some effort to really make this course a reality. That said, what I do want to do though is make a lot of the core content free for people who are just, I don't know, like a PS. Here's the thing. You might not need all the bells and whistles I'm talking about right now. You might not need a customized learning journey. Maybe you just need the newsletter, and you need a couple blog posts. So for me, I honestly haven't thought about the costs. For me, any course that I would create too, it's important for me to have, call it scholarship or price adjustment for people who live in different countries. Because for those that don't know, like I live in the United States, and I am very aware of the fact that the availability for education funding. So like, for example, like this is a course that if people took would actually help people with their work. So arguably their companies could pay for it. But I know that United States American companies have typically like a bigger budget set aside for people to explore that. So it's why you see some of the courses out there costing $500 or thousands of dollars, because a lot of times they can get the company to pay for it. And so what's different though is that if people are paying for it themselves, this is a very different question. And so if you ask me honestly, what I probably will do is I'll have a standard price. Actually, I don't know why I'm just talking about it. So let's just talk about cost. This is what my general philosophy is. So there'll be a standard cost, and let's call this like the standard. So this is companies are probably paying for this. Because anything else, right? If you develop a skill, especially one like knowledge management that can leverage a graph way of thinking, at least for me, I can't ever go back to linear ways of thinking, because you just realize the complexities that are missed as a result of only being able to think at that kind of shallow level. And graph thinking just opens up the world in a way that I just wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And that to me, that's been invaluable for me. But then, for example, like I've seen this at certain courses where if, let's say you're an entrepreneur or not even, like you're self-employed. That's the word I was looking for. If you're self-employed, really small company, and you don't got a huge budget, like there's probably gonna be some sort of reach out to me, tell me your situation, like discounted rate. And then more importantly, I think it's really important for scholarships. So people who, maybe you're a student and maybe there's like this, how do I say, like student costs? Maybe the student cost is, I have a little bit of this is like a separate conversation regarding the concept of free and what it does for people. And I think this has been talked about in many different formats. I think if you just say, oh, if you're a student, you can just get it for free. I think that does a couple of things. One, course hoarders like myself will just apply, grab it, and that'll be that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I wouldn't ever do free, but I think that sometimes there is value to saying it costs a cup of coffee, pay what it's worth to you. I don't know. I need to explore with myself as far as like philosophical exploration regarding what the best model is for that, because I've seen a lot of different like pay for what you think it's worth, etc. And I just haven't really sorted through like the merits of that just yet. But by paying for something, maybe that like keeps you more engaged. I don't know. We'll think about it. But of course, the other thing I want to mention is country discounted costs, because we won't get into this, but location-based pay is a controversial topic. But as a result, this means that people aren't working with the same pay. And so if their company wouldn't support this, let's say they want to, like someone wants to save their training budget for going to conferences or whatever, and they live in like another part, they don't live in the US, so they're not making US salary. I don't think they should be penalized for that. Obsidian is a free tool, and my goal is to really share this knowledge. So on top of a lot of this content that we'll be talking about will end up, to be honest, being free in some shape or form. It's just if you want a curated experience, I think that's what a lot of people will be paying for, and you'll get like more polished videos and stuff, and I'll think that through. But know that at least in my mind, it's just about creating content that I love, that I want to share with y'all. That's really the big thing. So location-based discounts is kind of like the high level on it. I really don't know what it's going to be. So let's see. O.Nerd here. I'm currently working on the details on the course of my own. You get a lot of great tips and insights here. I'm viewing this from a perspective of what people are always asking me as well. Oh, that's great. Glad to be chatting with a fellow course creator. Yeah, it's tricky. This is Epic Notes will be, it'll be the first course that I'm really embarking to do on my own. So in other words, like I plan on owning the creation from top down. In other words, like rather than throw it on a thing like Teachable or have another platform host this, I'm strongly debating actually creating the platform from the ground up, because I do think there is some innovation to be had in this space for how things are done, especially given the busy, like how much we're inundated with information these days. And so to be clear, I'm not criticizing the other platforms. I think they've done a wonderful job providing that information so that people can upload a series of videos and then payments really smooth and all that. But I do think there would be value if someone could be provided a framework that encouraged this type of thinking for the busy lives that we all live in. All right. So that was a little bit of a detour, but I think it was an important question and something that has to be considered a lot when it comes to what that cost is, because there is a bit of, you don't want to, I guess I'll add this as a tip or or from what I've read. If you charge too low, generally speaking, because we'll go back. If you charge too low for any, this has to do with like marketing in general. When you charge really low for things, what people have generally found is that people don't tend to value the thing. So in other words, if I told you all that, actually I don't even tell you all, I'll tell you how much content is out there right now that's free on YouTube. There's a ton. But there are a couple of reasons why this happens, but one of the reasons you haven't watched all of it is because one, there's a lot of it. Two, you don't know the quality of the content. And then three, it always feels like it's there and you can get to it whenever you get to it. And so for those of us that are creating courses like this, the other thing is that, for example, actually one of the costs here, actually I would say money back guarantee, I don't know, let's call it like, what's reasonable? 1 year? I don't know. I might want to double, like most people do like a 30-day or 60-day thing. 1 year might be a little extreme. I don't know. Maybe not. Because I would say this, because 30 days, the problem with 30 days is most people buy a course, they actually don't start within 30 days. So I feel like that 30 days is a little disingenuous. I know it's trying to motivate students to get started. I have mixed feelings about that. 90 days maybe is better because then that gives them 3 months. I don't know, 1 year, 9 days. Okay. All that to be said and done. When you do things like money back guarantees, for example, one of the problems with course creation or with selling this thing is they've found that people actually don't really, how do I explain this? There's a bit of a problem with people basically having unrealistic expectations of your work, which is funny in the sense of, okay, so for example, Epic Notes is released, and I say, Epic Notes costs $10 money back guarantee. I will probably find myself spending a ton of time with people requesting refunds because, oh, they realize Obsidian is stupid, and this is just really complicated, and I thought I was going to learn how to, but like I didn't learn anything, and I would like, that's all I would deal with. So on top of not probably making a lot of, not being able to, I'd say, like, how do I say this? On top of not being able to focus on what is important for the course, which is creating more content or enhancing the experience for people, I'm basically dealing with a lot of people that are unhappy. Because a lot of people, when you set the bar super low, this has been, it's been experimented on pretty frequently and generally just doesn't work out well. And then it's draining for me as a creator because then it means like I won't have energy for the next thing I want to do. By charging more, by basically valuing your work, what you're doing here is telling people that, look, if you want to give this a shot, like seriously think about it and see if this is something that's worth it for you. And the reason why I'm saying, like, let's say I set it at a higher price. Let's just call it $500, right? And let's say I'm saying the course is worth $500. The reason why that might sound like an absurd number for a lot of people. But what it does is it does this immediate filtering out of like, people, are they really serious about doing this? And then more importantly, I plan on having, as you can see, I plan to have this sort of structured tiered pricing in order to account for the fact that I don't think everyone that purchased the course should be paying that full rate, because I think there are different circumstances. And To be honest, this is actually something that came up yesterday, I think, when I was playing Tetris. So if you haven't heard about tether.io, just give them a little bit of a shout out. This is a free Tetris site that lets you play against people, and it's very well done, like phenomenal job. So I may have spent more time than I would care to admit practicing and playing on that. But I was actually questioned by one of the people in the gameplay when they're like, why are you paying for something that's free? Because they had the option to support the people. And personally, I've always felt that, at least for me, if I have the financial means, and more importantly, if I'm gaining value from someone's work, I think it's important to spread the love and to say, hey, look, like you created this awesome thing. I can't pay your salary, but here's my way of thanking you and supporting your work because I basically believe you're doing some good for the world. That's like my 2 cents on that. And so the reason I'm saying, $500 might be high for the average person. A lot of the companies who people can get to pay for it, they'll pay the rate because, again, do I think the value of the information is probably worth more than that? I do. But what I do think is important is that people have the opportunity to gain access to that information. And where I'm going with this is that I know some of the fears associated with this is that what if people take advantage of this? What are you going to do? Verify every university that they're going to school and stuff? There probably will be people who would tend to take advantage of the system that I'm creating here. But if that's the case, then so be it. Because I don't want to spend time trying to optimize for the perfect scenario in which I maximize the return on this course. Like I said, part of the reason I'm creating this course is because, one, I really love what Obsidian has done for the ecosystem. I love to create a really good resource for people to make really good use of this free tool that, again, it's bonkers. And so, for example, I pay for some services for Obsidian to support the team because I think the fact that this is all available to me in perpetuity is frankly phenomenal. All that said and done, I'm not trying to maximize it in a way that because I don't know, it's just called a life philosophy thing. It sounds like a kind of miserable way to live, to worry that every single person is going to take advantage. And then I'm doing this for fun. I'm doing this because I want to share the information with y'all and with people out there. And then if I manage to make some money off of it, that'll be great. That helps me support the next course. And if it doesn't do very well, then so be it. I had a lot of fun doing it. And so that's why I haven't spent a lot of time actually thinking about costs and optimizing this stuff, is because if in the end, a lot of the things we do in life are about growth, the journey, and creating the tapestry of life that is the experiences we have, then I'm certainly not going to censor it around how much money I've made. So anyhow, that's like my mini life rant right there. So let's see, I'm calling out Odat Nerd. How are you distributing it? Maybe you could start the money back clock when they start using the course or get X% through. Yeah, Odat Nerd, to your point, there is a couple questions regarding how this would work. I actually just think that if people bought the course by accident and then they were like, oops, I actually don't want it anymore, I'm of the opinion they can have their money back because you're not getting the value out of the course to begin with. If people bought it and then 30 days later I was like, you know what, actually, I'm not interested in this stuff. Personally, I want you to have your money back so you can do something else. Spend that money on taking a pottery class, whatever. And so, yeah, is this not does this not maximize the profit returns? Yeah, but once again, that's not the number one thing to me in life. And yeah, anyways, I should probably just write a little 10-minute thing on it. But as far as distribution, this is a good question. So let's talk about this. Actually, cost is probably a sub thing. Let's talk about distribution. What's a good emoji for distribution? You know what? I think of, yes, like a box, like shipping container. So we're going to do a cardboard box. Is it called package? It's called package. Okay. So my plan is probably distribution there'll be a website for it. There'll be videos for people to download and an interactive app to manage learning journey. I think that's basically it. So actually online video player. I think given my skill set, given the amount of time I think I can put into this is probably what I want to set up. And a nice artifact that may come out of this as a result, so I'll call it side note, might get a framework for other people to use. So in other words, if I can come up with a general system for people to then follow a similar pattern, because I do think once I have a framework for how this course would work, I gotta imagine other people would be interested in a similar type of thing. I would probably just release the framework for people to build and deploy on their own. I'm not necessarily sure I want to create a whole SaaS product. And SaaS, for those that don't know, is software as a service. I don't know if I want to do that whole thing, like a teachable kind of thing. I think I would rather just people pay a flat fee and they get the code and do whatever they want with it. And so I think that's what I'm thinking of on first glance. Jimena, of course, Tetris came up. Jimena, I'm actually thinking about writing a keynote on Tetris and how it relates to life. I did a little mini rant on Tuesday, actually, when we ended the stream. But that's just something I've been thinking about. Yeah, Tetris is on my mind fairly frequently. All right, Matrog here. Offer free modules to let potential customers see what they can expect from the course. Yes, agreed. So we talked about this about, let's see, distribution, free modules to let potential customers see what it is. So to be honest, my plan with this, so this here is I'm probably going to start structuring the productivity power hour to start piecemealing some of these content out so I can get a feel for it, but more importantly, create the free version of it. Because have you ever I've seen these comments sometimes when people are writing reviews for like books, courses and things, which I think is silly, which is they'll review the book and the review is, this is so stupid. I can't believe I paid $10. If you read the blog, you'll find all of their content from this book. Don't bother paying $10. And I think that's really funny because to me, you're not paying $10 because you expect this to be brand new information, in my opinion. You're paying, when you buy a book, when you buy something, you're buying a curated experience. Because I don't know about you, but my blog, I can tell you for sure, it's not curated to be this perfect thing that you can read from cover to cover, and then it's edited down to like finesse with exercises and all that stuff. That's not what it is. But what I can do is what I'm thinking about doing is basically providing like a YouTube free version of a majority of lessons. Because one, I'm going to need some time to flesh out some of these concepts and how deep I want to go. And then after that, for people who haven't been following the YouTube channel and don't have time to watch an entire, or not even just time, because one of the things I found when it comes to free resources is that it can be, without the social environment to learn together and that kind of stuff, it can get tricky to keep motivating yourself to just keep watching things because frankly, it's the internet and there's a lot of things that distract you. Whereas if you engage with the course, actually, this is something I completely forgot about too. The format. I use the VHF when it comes to format. The format of this live cohort video only. I actually want to do a cohort version of this course. That's the other thing. Because video courses are great for those that like, again, if you really discipline and you learn well that way, like more power to you. But live cohorts can make all the difference from just an engagement perspective because you basically have some motivation to say, this is time I'm dedicating to said thing. Now, I'm realizing as I'm talking about this, that one of the challenges with the live cohort, however, is that usually everyone is doing the same module at the same time. This will make the live cohort a little bit trickier, but it's possible given that I'm trying to flip the entire journey on its head anyways, I probably would run a cohort very differently. So off the top of my head, the live cohort will mostly consist of people who are saying like, here we go, a couple of things. I would say it's like one month. That's all it says here. 4 consecutive weeks. I'll explain this real quick. Okay, first part of the live cohort. I only want people to be able to commit to 1 month. The reason I'm suggesting 1 month. Oh no, I'm getting too far from the mic. Jimena, thank you so much. One of the reasons I want to commit to the 4 week is because I've been on cohorts that are longer than that. And when people have the time to dedicate to it, once again, I think it works really well. It builds really great camaraderie. I've had some really wonderful experience in these longer cohorts. On the other hand, for those, sometimes when it's just the wrong time in life and things get caught up, it's impossible to commit. And then I find that even myself, I get disconnected from the cohort because I just feel so behind. Honestly, even just missing 1 week in a cohort, something can be enough to completely derail someone's project. I'm speaking from personal experience. So by having 4 consecutive weeks, I would probably be asking people to set aside, call it like 1 hour each week to sit down together with the group. And to be very clear though, I am going to make sure that the cohort is actually a small group. Once again, this does not maximize profit. And that's always like a question. My goal here is to create engagement for people who can actually commit to said thing, because otherwise what you end up getting is, anyways, once again, I've been in cohorts that are smaller, larger. I've had a lot of different experiences, and I feel like the small group keeps everyone accountable, and it creates for a much more memorable experience. Small group. One of the things that might be able to do though is one-on-one. One-on-one format might work for some people who, I found this format to be helpful. Like for me, sometimes if I can't commit to a group schedule, because especially with the remote cohort, timelines can get a little tricky. So if people want to pay for, say, like a one-on-one guided experience, then this is where I would invest my time to dedicate an hour or like 30 minutes once a week with them to like direct specific questions. And so as part of this live cohort, as I'm designing this in my head, the reason I think the 4 consecutive weeks works well is because what we would be asking people to do is to have 1 week set aside for basically group discussion and interaction. And then outside of that, we'd want the group to commit to, I don't know, what's reasonable? 2 hours, probably. That would mean 3 hours. I'm asking people to commit 3 hours a week to the cohort max. Because again, I'm anticipating people to be busy, to get distracted. And so part of the experiment or my theory with this is that if we can actually concentrate the content so that people can get good information out within that time, and then have a working session in a time where we're all together, like on a Zoom call or something, I think people could actually get real value extracted from this, rather than this pressure of, oh, it's like I'm taking a college class all over again, and I have 3 hours of lecture, and then I have 10 hours of reading material to look, and then on top of the 10 hours, or that's exaggeration, but usually there's 2 hours of reading material, and then you have to spend time actually working on the material, because if you don't apply it, it won't stick to your brain. So there's a lot there. So yeah. So I think the live cohort could be really good for that. And more importantly, it gives me a chance to interact with everyone that's taking the course, and they can ask questions. And so I think the purpose of these group sessions is not everyone will not be learning the same thing each week. And I know this sounds really controversial, at least immediately to me, because it sounds weird, because what if everyone is learning something different? But I think that to me, isn't that the value, I would say, of these sort of, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to intentionally shake the format up, because I do think there is value in this. I can't tell you why. There's something instinctual that's, if people could talk about the things they learned and what they found valuable and shared that with the group, if they could do that, you'd end up getting, I think, inspiration across the group for seeing how people do specific things. And knowledge management, or just honestly the process of thinking and creativity, is about exploring new things. And I think one of the hardest things I've found when it comes to being an adult in today's society is it's easy to get caught up in like a rhythm you're comfortable with, like the community you're with, the ideas that you're surrounded by. And I think to shake things up sometimes, to truly innovate, you got to be willing to get outside your bubble, your comfort zone. And if the group sessions can provide a safe place for people to do in terms of like how they're creating notes, I'm not necessarily saying we should like host like deep philosophical discussions in those, but maybe there can be themes. There might not be the same module for everyone, but there can be like, maybe the answer is a theme. And so the first thing will be like people getting set up, people having questions regarding like different best practices, and then could shape each week according to the theme of the group's choice. And what's cool about this would end up creating some really unique experience, meaning every cohort will go through something. To be honest, actually, I can't even, let me be clear though, for the record, I have no idea how many cohorts I would run, but I know I'd want to run at least, I'll say probably 2 to 3. Because I think it would be interesting to see it iterated on, to see it go through. But then after that, we'll see how the format went, what people thought, if there's even more interest in it. So for the sake of keeping track of record with the universe, I say 2 to 3 is probably the most I would commit myself to at the moment. ODAT nerd here. It seems like a plus point. Different people learning at different rates. Yeah, that's I think what I'm thinking too, is because education as a field has already done, like we've seen this method already done so many times when it comes to everyone is on when everyone is learning at the same rate. And don't get me wrong, as an instructor, there is predictability in that, and that is good because then it just helps with overall structure in a way. But I wonder if there is, and for the sake of illustrating both sides of it, individual instruction is the opposite of that, where it can be tailored to how fast the person learns. So an example of this is if you're learning to play an instrument for the first time. If you're learning with a group, you will be stuck with whatever, basically you'll be stuck with whatever the instructor's pace is at. So if it's, okay, today we're learning the C chord, everyone practices the C chord. Everyone plays the C chord together. The thing is that if you are, let's say you're inquisitive enough and talented enough and you start figuring out, oh, there's D, E, E flat, blah, blah, blah. You can't necessarily be practicing that when you're in the group session because you're going to be discordant. Like you'll be like out of harmony with the rest of the group and you'll interrupt other people's learning. And I think a lot of education is approached in this idea of, actually, I think the music analogy actually works out quite well in this, is because anytime someone really goes outside the bubble, it disrupts the rest of the group. However, I don't think that is necessarily true when it comes to just learning in general, right? There are some situations where you cannot, what my theory would not apply to certain things. But in this particular case of knowledge management, I sincerely believe that each individual in this world has a unique set of experience and a lens on the world that brings an interesting perspective to the table. Now, not everyone believes that about themselves up front, and getting people to get comfortable with this idea and be confident in it is a whole separate matter. But at least based on this premise and this core belief, I think this means that when we're talking about how people want to use knowledge management and the problems they're having, I think we'd end up with a very rich and diverse pool of ideas and topics and discussions that would result. At least that's my initial theory. Yes, lots of theories here. Okay. All right. Let's keep going, shall we? Okay, so we have the base node. Base node, that's fine. Let's go over to the content. This is what we're working on. Okay, so we know, actually, let me move the status. And this doesn't need to be all the way up here. The status can go down here. Status, the course is in progress. This is mode create. Actually, what did I have for mode? Seer, pilot, airplane engineer, researcher. I thought I had one for this, but anyways, creator is fine. Okay, actually, tags is a whole topic in and of itself. Tags, linked notes. There probably needs to be a crash course on Obsidian Markdown. Maybe. Again, I'm not trying to be... I've taken so many courses that I find myself... How about this? I'm defaulting to what I've usually see. So, for example, if you were to see a normal Obsidian course with Markdown, like how it's Markdown, they would spend time teaching you how to bold things, how to make things italic. I think what I want to do with Obsidian Markdown is to teach specific Obsidian specialized skills with this. Because one thing that, for example, that I don't know if you all know, but if you do the double equal sign around this, and this might even be standard Markdown, but for some reason I didn't learn this until Obsidian. You can highlight your text, for example, and then there's queries and stuff like that too. Oh, speaking of, that is absolutely a topic that needs to be taught. Queries, basically how you search for different blocks and that kind of stuff. Which means Obsidian data view is, I'm in the wrong position on my keyboard, that's why I can't type. Is here. Obsidian Excalidraw, I believe, is an essential part of the Obsidian experience as well. So there'll be different plugins we're covering. There'll be different techniques. Factor plugin. This is a plugin. Plugin. Tags. Templater. Obsidian. I can't spell. Back matter. Inline fields. Front matter. Oh yeah, this concepts regarding front matter theory, how to best utilize front matter. I have definitely opinions on that. So that's part of what I would share. Okay. What else do we think about when we think about? Oh, probably how to leverage the graph. There's a lot of filtering and stuff that you can do with it that can be useful for people when they're looking to visualize things. I will say the Excalidraw opens up a bit of the galaxy brain stuff when it comes to Obsidian. That's why that's on there. And then the key thing though, which is going to be all modules should have exercises to allow people to put it into practice. Okay, yep, that's absolutely the case. So periodic notes is about managing timestamps, but then you know what, project management in Obsidian. Oh, there was a question actually, shoot, I apologize. Let me, because these are things that I definitely care about. Let's see, there was a question about the checklist. Okay, I must have missed it, by the way. Oh my God, Michael, I just saw your, let's see, I know, whoops. Let me search. Here you go, impro crates. There you go, here. Let me actually just put this down right now. This is Michael. Good, I spelled it right, great. Okay. So back to the course content. Okay, so the course itself, whoops, Epic Notes course. There we go. Okay, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, it embedded a note. That was weird. Scala draw. I'm just gonna delete that file. Okay. Okay, so we were talking about the question that was asked earlier, so I just made just for the sake of answering it. So currently I am not using the Obsidian checklist plugin. I was using it for a time and there is value in it. I think I've had some trouble with it for different reasons. So for those that don't know, I'm very nerdy about productivity tooling in terms of checklists and that kind of stuff. And so I'll need to probably dive back in to see what updates they've made to it. But I know at one point it wasn't totally fitting in my workflow. But anyhow, we'll see. Something to keep in mind. Okay, making sure I just didn't miss any other chats. All right. Okay, templates, exercises, note design philosophy. Crash course in Markdown. That might even be the core content. Oh, images. Images is a whole module as well, actually. Images and assets. Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the one of the misconceptions of Obsidian is that it's all plain text. And one of the things Obsidian provides for us beyond just being Markdown is that it's a rendering engine. In other words, we can do things like include images. So like I did before, if we wanted to, for example, and I could just say, oh, I'm going to link to my owl tutorial meme right here, and I'll embed it right in. And what's cool about this now is that this owl tutorial drawing meme, if we look at the graph, let's see. Oh, interesting that at the asset. But you can see this is where it's been mentioned inside of the linked mention. In these two notes, the owl drawing has been brought up. So it gives you ability to really make rich notes that go way beyond text. So some of my build with Bens, for example, actually contain the video files that are related. And that is something that I actually unlocked recently. So actually now I just realized. So syncing is a whole question in and of itself for syncing philosophy. Syncing data. And then what was the other thing I was talking about? Oh, okay, no worries. Thanks for hanging out, Jimena. Bye. Okay, syncing data is one piece of it. Syncing assets, embeds. Yep, that's right. Oh, this is what I wanted to talk about. Right. Philosophy of linked thinking. Yeah. So this is things like flat structure, beyond the folder constraints, power of a note to be one that does not exist yet. Okay. This is pretty good. I clearly had some wrangling to do to get a sense of where it is. But in terms of the next steps for my course content creation, for those who are like thinking about maybe using Obsidian to do the same thing, is that at some point the curriculum actually, excuse me, the curriculum would actually contain specific notes to specific sections. So for the purposes of illustrating this, so for now, let's just say for a fact that actually Ben's tips probably is maybe they'll call like patterns. Maybe these are like patterns to apply. Anyways, okay, actually, here's one that actually makes more sense. How to use Obsidian Templater. So I would refactor this into its own note. And so you'll see that it's brought it over. Again, this is just techniques that I'll have to teach people, but it's brought over all the content. What's cool about this is now you'll notice that related links, it actually contains my Epic Notes course, like the relationship has been created. And then what I can do with this is basically say, okay, now I have a whole module on using Obsidian templater. And then the await keyword, I can actually just refactor that into its own note. And now this is connected backwards to Obsidian templater, right? And then I can say, this is useful for making sure that the JavaScript is happening in sequence. Otherwise, you can run into weird bugs like templates being returned before your code is executed, or your desired code. Technically, it's all being executed. Okay. So for example, it'll be like, this is like my snippet on the await keyword. Granted, I don't like the name await keyword because this is in the specific context of the templater though. So what I'm gonna do with Obsidian templater plugin, I'm just gonna be super specific in the file name, and which brings me to file naming philosophy. Again, this is all gonna need to be reorganized and refactored in a way that makes sense to people. Yeah, because that's the tricky part, is trying to figure out a way to introduce concepts that say, hey, look, are you curious about this topic? Here's a high level thing of what we'll be going through. Choose your adventure. Yeah, that's like kind of the tricky balance that needs to be struck here. Because, for example, the await keyword with templater is an advanced topic. I would say most likely, most people who are, unless you're in the deeper dive of the JavaScript section of templater, most of the time people using templater would be using more like the name, like they're trying to replace certain things. So this is where I probably need to make this, I don't know, call it advanced topics is what this would be. And maybe this is like intermediate. Just trying to get a little bit, I'm not sure I can really classify this that way, but what are some things with the template that we need to know? Like how to insert a template, replace variables in template, create variables, create a template. These are like the fundamentals of it. And then after that, you start into getting scripting. So maybe it's more, you know what? I don't like beginner, intermediate, advanced because there's like a bit of a connotation with that. These are like fundamentals. If you don't know how to do these things, nothing else really matters. And then this is more, I call them enhancements. So like this is like scripting and all that fun stuff. Okay, that is good there. Maybe you have fundamentals, you have patterns. Oh, maybe that's what it is. Oh, I think I like that better. You have fundamentals and then you have patterns, right? Not everyone needs certain patterns, but these patterns can be very useful. And then, for example, patterns that are going to be used a lot for people who do date time stuff would be how to like formatting dates from the thing. That's actually a really common thing that most people, I'm not expecting people to read Moment.js docs to figure out what the right format is. If they take the course, they should be able to go, ooh, I like that format. I'm going to like copy that snippet. That's what I'm going to use. And I'm just going to save it that way. Invoking templates within linked notes within templates. That's like a thing that I need to remember as a pattern. Hey, I see Wingman here in the chat. Yes, this course is officially kicked off. I have very publicly talked about this now. I've hinted at it in the past, but I've decided to get off my butt and we're going to start making this a reality. So this actually helps me out a bit because I've been thinking about how I want to use Productivity Power Hour going forward. And honestly, I probably will be just using it going forward to start. We'll take, I don't know, call it like 10 minutes of each Productivity Power Hour where I've set aside like some, like a specific, how do I say this? I'll say scripted. A scripted piece of content, or curated piece of content for this course, such as, for example, one of the things that I don't think should be locked behind the course, should be absolutely free, is you want to get started with Obsidian. So you want to install it or you want to set up your vault for your first time. That kind of stuff is just going to be on YouTube. And then there'll be like a version on the course. You can, if you need to learn how to install it and you need to learn how to set it up, that's fine. And there'll be like basic doc tutorials for those sort of things. But otherwise, like I want that stuff to be free. So that way I can film that, put that, and then people can get a sense of what the course will be like. And then over time, we'll flesh it out. So this is really happening. So actually, I'm really excited because now Productivity Power Hour is for now, will be used to make me more productive in actually making sure this course is a reality. So this should be interesting. And granted, we'll still talk about other things during the Productivity Power Hour, but I like the idea of having it set with the thing, then casual hangout while I'm working on some stuff. People can ask questions as I'm thinking through things. You know what? I think this is a good place to stop. And okay, actually, I take that back. I have one final comment for those thinking about why this is useful from a graph relationship perspective. Okay, so why might you want to plan this out in Obsidian? It's because you'll notice here that the Epic Notes course now starting to create relationship between things. So for example, I'm actually going to display, groups, not group, filter. Oh yeah, give me more depth. Here's more depth. Okay. You'll notice here that now we're starting to see relationships go a bit farther, right? The await keyword with Obsidian templater plugin. Here's the thing though, and actually I'm going to illustrate the slide because I think this will be the easiest way to show the value of this. The await keyword has like a pattern that you need to talk about, but renaming files, so actually let me rename this properly. So how to rename files programmatically with Obsidian templater. Okay, this is the note. Actually, wait, no, I want to refactor this so I get that information. So there you go. You'll see that the how to rename programmatically is now linked to Obsidian templater. But what's really cool about this though is that this, call it like a prerequisites you could have, is I can link the await keyword in Obsidian templater plugin note like this. And then what we end up seeing here, I didn't actually show this, show neighbor links. There we go. And then let me close all this and zoom in so that people can actually see this. This is the beautiful part of Obsidian, is that if you're intentional about this, what you end up getting is this ability to start seeing relationships that go beyond a linear relationship of top down, learn this and then this. Because if this graph relationship works out well, it basically provides guidance on, not even guidance. This is what I was talking about regarding a user ability, like allowing students to choose their own journey in their learning curriculum, and that they can figure out what 100% means to them. So in other words, maybe they decide they go from the course to being like, hey, I know I want to rename files in a templater. Like that's a problem I have. I find myself constantly doing the same pattern over and over again. Okay, great. So if they went into this module and they like said, okay, this is what I want, then you could then, because of this relationship, because you understand the relationship with graph thinking, we could then basically link them to the right things to say, these are the things you need to know to get this skill to 100%. And actually, one of my good friends, Chris, he talks about this. We talked about this a lot with him in his college course. I think he calls it directive acyclic graph. In that, actually, I'm not going to try to explain it, but that's the term that he mentions. And this is the experience I would like to create for people when they're learning things, is to say, this is the problem I have. What are the prerequisites for this specific problem? Because if all you're looking to do is rename files programmatically, you need to make sure you understand the await keyword, because we saw that was a problem earlier. And then you probably need a couple of the fundamentals of templater as far as like writing the variable, etc. But then after that, you're done. And then if you want to dive further in, you're like, oh, actually, I need to learn how to manipulate dates and all that stuff. Then there'll be a date module that they will like, you see what I mean? This is what I'm talking about with the unique curvature of the path, because now you just have this interesting ability to just have things talk to each other. Anyhow, so I just wanted to demo that advantage to you in Obsidian. So let's hop on over to the camera. Yes, exactly. Matt here. Everyone's going to want something a little bit different out of their notes. And that's what I think Epic Notes should be for people, is because I'm not telling you what an Epic Note system will be. The Epic Note system for each person will be one that's useful for them, that helps to facilitate their line of thinking and to provide them information when they need it. If they do that, I think that will make this course successful. Nothing else. I could care less if people subscribe to different fundamentals, philosophies. Develop your own, develop what works best for you. I think that's what I'll have to remind people when they're taking the course. Anyhow, with that, we've had a pretty jam-packed day. We've talked a bit about the Epic Notes Obsidian course that I'm going to be basically starting work on. I have no idea when the release date will be, and we literally just started this. So, I will try to, not even try, I'll keep you all posted. So when the newsletter's up, you all want to sign out to be the first ones to find out when it's released. I'll definitely be talking about it on the stream. And so whether it's Twitter and stuff, I'm trying to figure out how to get those channels so that people can track things the way they want. Because I also know the stream can be hard for people to catch live, and not to mention if you're watching this YouTube recording, then it can be a lot to filter that information. So once again, choose your own adventure. That's what I believe when it comes to this kind of information. So I really appreciate everyone for joining today and hanging out. Special shout out to O.Nerd here for giving his thoughts as far as in your own journey. As a course creator, I appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and collaborate with me a bit. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you all, and I will chat with you all next week. Thanks, everyone, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.